Madam Mayor, we're recording.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll call to order the regular council meeting for Tuesday, June 6, 2023. Is there any public input? As the meeting is now open to statements from no more than 5 members of the public of no more than 2 minutes in length each.
Hi everyone, my name is Jonathan, for those of you who don't know me, and I am here to answer Councillor De Bruin's call for a solution to the unhomed crisis in Lillooet. I'm here today because a lot of my suggestions for council don't make it past the dinner table at home, but I'm excited to be here. So, you know, many citizens in Lillooet continue to be frustrated, including myself, by council's focus on short-term solutions that don't actually solve the problem that they're trying to fix. You know, these short-term solutions often obfuscate the problem, and the problem is now that after successive decades and decades of governments, both in Lillooet and provincially and federally, obfuscating and obscuring the problems that are facing this town, the problems are no longer able to be missed, and they're coming up and they're evident for everyone to see on Main Street and on all of our streets. I think, and I think everyone else here would agree that the role of government is to provide for the basic human rights of their constituents. And you know, on Article 35 of the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, housing is listed as a universal right there. It's right there beside food and water, so it's very important. You know, and as with all basic rights like water and to some extent food, market forces just need to be removed to ensure the fair and equitable access for everyone in our society to ensure that. So with that in mind, I would like for council and the district staff here to look at how Lillooet can take the examples of the Singapore model as well as the Vienna model to and look at and study how they can be addressed and implemented here in Lillooet. And I understand that there's a big difference between the city of Singapore and Lillooet, but you know, surely there are ways that we can manage the crisis in our small ways here in Lillooet. So, you know, in brief, Singapore has publicly owned managed buildings that offer affordable housing, and they serve as a revenue stream for the city. In Vienna, rent is income dependent, and it's capped at 25% of your takeaway. Buildings are built by developers, but the land continues to be owned by the municipality. This ensures that there's a consistent revenue stream for the city, while ensuring that there are some market forces at play there as well. So, in short, I think the solution to the unhomed in Lillooet is to offer them safe, affordable places to be with the services that they need. And for those of you who are more numbers focused, I'll offer some numbers. So in British Columbia, an unhomed person on the street is going to cost the British Columbia $55,000 a year. And that's, you know, per person in healthcare, law enforcement, all the services that encompass an unhomed person. Meanwhile, a person in supportive housing, it's going to cost the taxpayer $37,000. So even if we're providing free supportive housing for people that would otherwise be on the street, it's a net savings for the taxpayer. And there's also the stat that for every dollar that governments spend and invest in supportive housing, it creates $4 back in social and economic value in reduced social services cost, safer neighborhoods, increased spending in the local economy, as well as increased land value.
Thank you.
Where did you get your numbers from? Where did that come from?
Those numbers are from they are from the BC Greens website. They're quoting a study that was done in British Columbia. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, seeing none. Is there any late additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, will somebody please move that the June 6, 2023 regular council meeting agenda be adopted. Councillor Reed, second by Councillor DeBruin. All in favor? Delegations, Lillooet Chamber of Commerce 2023 Economic Development Projects. Janice. I detect your last name, but I'm not good.
It's okay. Not a lot of people. It's the area of sports. Very exciting. I'm actually from Vienna, so I love it. Beneath the skies. Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Johannes Bodendorfer, and I'm the Executive Director of the Lillooet Chamber of Commerce. Today, I want to talk a little bit about economic development and some experiences that we as a chamber have gathered in the last over the last year and a bit in Lillooet. And I know Suzanne later will speak about this as well. So hopefully together we can make some great progress. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional non-ceded territory of the St'át'imc Nation. The work we do right here, right now, affects our relationship with our neighbors, and it affects our relationship with our land. So I want to thank the St'át'imc for stewarding this land thus far, so that we can be here and do what we're doing right now. So just by way of overview, as you may know, the Lillooet Chamber has grown to be Lillooet's largest and only business association in our town. We have over 90 members now, representing all industries in Lillooet. And we have a target annual budget of around 100,000. We achieved this last year. We're on track to achieving that again this year, and have a team of 6 directors and 1 staff member, which all of us are trying to support the business community here in town. We're in the process of hiring a 2nd staff member, so that's very exciting for me, and will increase our capacity. We also host regular monthly events, and as you by now definitely know, we also try to be fairly active in advocacy efforts for business members. Our goal is to make Lillooet a better place to do business in and support our entrepreneurs in their efforts. And I believe all of us actually share that goal. So as a chamber, we also try to do something called economic development, which is a very nebulous term. It means a lot of things to a lot of people. So today, I'm just hoping to share some thoughts and insights with you from the chamber perspective on that term. So I suspect in the coming months, we will have plenty of economic development proposals, projects, ideas, suggestions, discussions, arguments, and any other initiatives that aim at this fairly broad concept. So I just want to begin by quickly defining what I mean when I say economic development. And my hope is that this will be helpful in the coming months and years as we talk about these ideas and projects. So there is the academic definition of economic development, which is economic development is a process through which a given economy, whether national, regional, local, becomes more complex and grows in terms of income or wealth generated per person. That's nice, but not very practical. So I'd like to use a more practical definition of this, which is economic development is programs, policies, or activities that work to do a whole number of things, including to create more jobs, create more job variety, keep businesses going, get new businesses, improve the quality of life, have a more productive use of property, having more local goods, and so on and so forth, more skilled workers. It's a fairly broad definition, but it's a bit more hands-on and practical. So one of the other frameworks that I like to talk about is a bit of the SMART framework. And this is really important when we talk about something as nebulous as economic development, which is that every economic development project should fit broadly into this framework, which is it's specific towards a particular goal or outcome. It's measurable. It has quantifiable targets. It's achievable. There's a practical purpose to the project. It's relevant to a local context, as well as timely. So the goals are actually quarterly, yearly, 3-yearly, 5-yearly, etc. Anything more than 5 years becomes super nebulous in my opinion. But the point is there should be a time frame on it. So for any projects that we look at, we should always measure against a framework of some kind. Because when we do that, we can actually pull specific metrics for the projects that we're discussing and sort them and create targets for those metrics. So we can create two types of targets: quantitative targets and qualitative targets. Quantitative targets basically being numbers, and every goal should have numbers attached to it. And I just wrote out a couple ideas, but the point is that there are targets. As could be things like the number of business licenses issued, the value of renovation projects that increases. I know the district is keeping track of that, which is great. The percent vacant or underutilized spaces we have in town, the number of businesses that close, the number of enforcement complaints that the district receives or complaints in general, the number of investment dollars received, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of quantitative targets. And then there's also qualitative targets. And sometimes we forget about those too, which are measured in perceived experiences of what people want to happen. So that's the type of enforcement complaint. Is it always the same that people complain about? The nature of that complaint. That's often gathered in surveys. So, you can survey business owners, residents, newcomers, entrepreneurs, industry-specific groups, et cetera, et cetera. And all of those intend to capture the quality of the experience people are getting from any given project. Importantly, those things are quantifiable. Sometimes surveys are seen as not valuable tools. You can quantify surveys. It's something I've done many, many times. And look at exactly what are the numbers attached to the various surveys that you're running. So the reason this is important is because as a chamber, we have heard a number of things throughout the year, and I'm sure all of you have heard this as well. And I'm just going to broadly classify some of the issues that we've heard. And hopefully, in any kind of economic development work we do, we try to address these issues. So the first one, broadly, we do not need more plans. We need practical solutions. That is something that I've heard over and over and over again from many people that I've talked to, is that we are planned out. I believe the district of Lillooet currently has 7 tourism plans and a variety of other plans. It's something that I've had many conversations about and something that I've heard. Another thing I've heard a lot is we need to support our small businesses. They are struggling, and the next couple of years are not getting any easier. So they're struggling with their own finances. They're struggling with traffic. They're struggling with understanding rules and regulations and their requirements within the system. We also need to support our core sectors: tourism, agriculture, construction, transportation. Some of these sectors that our businesses are really strong in, and they're struggling. They're missing that structure and that ability to grow as businesses. And lastly, we need more people. We need more talents. We need more ability to really excel as a community. So based on these are just broad categories. There's obviously many more specifics, but based on these, I've been spending the year thinking a lot about what are some of the things we can be doing on the ground in a specific, measurable way that can actually help address these issues. I'm not saying I'm going to be doing all of these things I'm about to show and just briefly go through them, but or that we're even going to attempt them. But for me, it's a bit of a checklist. Some of the things that I think could help address these things, and I'm hoping sharing this with you, but give you some ideas as well as to what projects you think might be good ones as well. So one is infrastructure. We've heard this a million times, but there are some very practical things that have happened, are happening, or have stopped happening in the community around this. There's a facade program. I believe it's on pause right now. There's a beautification committee. I believe they're struggling right now. Main Street, a lot of people have a lot of vision of Main Street. I know we're talking about sewer pipes and we're talking about water pipes, but people need a vision. And it's crazy what we can achieve when we create that vision. Lots of marketing, lots of research work that can happen, right? We have several business directories. Lillooet is very weak on collateral, so marketing materials, investment guides, maps, brochures, things like that. We're very weak. Trip to the visitor center can show anyone that. A trade show directory. I'm I know with the brewery, I go to a lot of trade shows, and I know there's lots of trade shows out there that people need to know about. Things like that, investment guide, underutilized land inventories, et cetera, et cetera. Nurturing entrepreneurship, that's about creating more talent in the community. There's lots of ideas around specific ideas around doing that, and the district can set that as a goal if they want to. And as well as some of the business issues that we had talked about and we had heard about a couple times. So I think that really comes down to a lack of understanding, communication between the district and its business community, and really trying to raise the standard in the community of how to start a business, how to run a business, how to renovate a business, and so on and so forth. And I think there's lots of work that can happen specifically in that realm to address some of the challenges. And then I'm just going to skip over this. I have some specific sector-specific ideas, right? Agriculture, tourism, transportation. And then, of course, the auxiliary issues, housing being one of them. That's a big one, and I'm not touching it, but it could be as simple as an inventory. Craigslist doesn't work in Lillooet, right? Not that I know. There are very specific, simple things that can be done to address this. I've been approached by a housing society several times. I'm not taking it on, but I know there's interest in the community, and as of today, I heard there might even be one. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done. Childcare entrepreneurship is something that happens in Squamish a lot, where individuals step up in the childcare realm. It's something that can happen, and there's a lot of ideas around that. So overall, I kind of wanna just recap this by saying that there's a million ideas. And as I evaluate ideas, as hopefully all of you evaluate ideas, I'm hoping to give some ideas around what are some of the frameworks by which we can judge what's a good idea and what's a bad idea, and really look at which projects are worthy looking through the year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years, and what projects are not in favor of the community. So just some broad general ideas, because we haven't heard from you in a while. So thank you.
Any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Johannes, you've been talking to a bunch of people and whatnot. Why don't you make a little list of 5 different things that you'd like to see, or the business community would like to see in the program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now I have a list of about 75 things. I think that exactly. So I think the challenge is the top 5, right? Which are those? Yeah. So I think that's something that is of interest, and that's something that has to happen in collaboration, right? And some specific projects that we can say, hey, by the end of 2023, we've actually checked out 5 things. So, and I know Suzanne has some great ideas on that as well. So, yeah.
Question. The housing inventory. So there was a housing inventory done, like it was done back in the 1990s. Do you refer to, because I mean, we haven't increased our boundaries after the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that, and I know this because I actually did it. It was I worked for economic development, and that was my job at that time, was to drive around with this other guy, and we drove around and looked at all the available properties that were potential builds.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, those, like I said, those parcels have not changed, not really.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
what you're looking at?
I haven't seen the 1990s one. I'll go look for that. I think that's a good one. My idea on this comes more from what we did in Squamish a little bit, which is drive around and try to figure out.
Yeah.
I think my experience, and other people may have had other experiences on this, and the housing file is not my expertise here, but I think my experience has been is that the housing inventories in Lillooet are very informal. It's who you know. Other communities have more formalized structures around them. And even if it's just a Craigslist, or we have a Facebook group, things like that, right? If you formalize the structure around that, where you say, hey, these people always have a space available, and you can bridge the gap, again, I'm just spitballing ideas here, bridge the gap between renters and generally available rental spaces, right? But it does take driving around the community, knocking on doors, looking at a map, word of mouth, right? So, and I know that's what, if there was a housing society act, if that's what I would task them with, right? Is go talk to people who has rental properties in their thing, right? I don't know if there's a list of that. There might be. So it's a challenge, but instead of, my philosophy is, instead of sort of being overburdened by the largeness of the challenge, I try to find the very specific small scale thing that can be done on our small level here. You know, no one has $20 million, but everyone can get in a car and knock on doors.
And lastly, is that, so when you're talking about hiring another person, a second staff member, is that something that that second staff member would do? Would they look into things like that, housing inventory, trade show directories, would that be, or what would they be doing?
Yes, so that's kind of, that's what we're refining right now a little bit. Definitely, I would want anyone who works with me to stay focused on the mission of the chamber, which is to support businesses, right? I think it's really easy to get distracted, and as societies, we often chase money and not strategic objectives. The housing file is an interesting one because it is so foundational to everything else, right? And you know, we can support businesses all we want, hire workers, then so there might be some overlap there. I would caution against it. I would rather, if the district wants to support a housing society, it's the only other nonprofit I think Lillooet needs, then maybe, right? I would rather support that, but it's something that I think I would probably shy away from, just because I want to really stay focused on the business side of things. Will we interact with it? Most certainly.
Well, I know Lillooet does have a Lillooet Housing Society, and there is an AGM next month, so I will I'll speak to them.
Good, yeah. I've been approached a couple times and I've always said no. So I'm really glad someone's taken it on. Yay.
No,
All right.
I'm not taking it on,
Okay.
but I would talk to them and maybe, you know, throw it out there.
I think that's a great idea.
Throw it back. Okay. Great, thank you. Oh,
I'm just interested with your list, why manufacturing and industry aren't listed at all.
Yeah, it's a good question. So part of that list has an arbitrary character to it because one of the projects I'd like to start is an industry analysis of Lillooet. I don't actually know what percent of our GDP, if you will, is which industry. And so I don't know how much is manufacturing versus construction. I vaguely know manufacturing is also a big component in Lillooet. I think there's some work that I have to do to understand how big is it exactly and what kind of manufacturing, because I think that also changes how you would approach the solution, right? I think beer manufacturing be very different than a sawmill, for example, right? So I think this is something I'd like to do in Colorado for the district one day, maybe, and work on some of the work that's been done already to really understand what is our business community made up from. I mean, I have my 90 members. I know that distribution. I don't know how representative that is in terms of output figures, right? One small nonprofit is smaller than one big construction company, but manufacturing is definitely an important one as well. And that's where I think trade shows and one of the things is market access. I think, and these resources exist already with Small Business BC and stuff like that. They just have to be pulled into the community. Is for a manufacturing business to understand, how do I grow from, selling my stuff at the farmer's market to selling my stuff in the storefront to selling my stuff across BC to exporting it to Germany, right? I think all of those are independent steps that require different level of support. And there's lots of resources around understanding what do I need to get to that level. So yeah, long story short, manufacturing is an important one. I don't know. I don't have a grasp on the dimensions yet.
Yeah, even though it is shrinking, you still do have the businesses that are with sawmills, the logging, you've got your road building, you've got all of that out there as well. Okay, just throwing that one out there.
okay, thank you. Okay, I will ask, is there any public or statutory hearing? No, I'll move on to the adoption of the minutes. Will someone please move? May 16, 2023, regular council meeting minutes be adopted as presented. And that the January 17, 2023 public hearing report be adopted as presented. That the February 14, 2023 public hearing report be adopted as presented. And that the April 4, 2023 public hearing report be adopted. Councilor Reid, seconded by Councilor Plant. All in favor? Carried. Any business arising from the minutes? And no arising reports. So we'll move on to correspondence and petitions. Ask, does anyone wish to remove one or more of the 7 correspondence items under 9.1 of the agenda? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, then can somebody make a motion that the correspondence item be received as information? Councilor DeBruin, seconded by Councilor Flynn. All in favor? Carried. Okay, 11.1 economic development update presentation. Suzanne Denbeck.
Hello, good evening. It's nice to be here. I have an update for you, and I thought I would just do a little walk through the last few years and talk about where we've come from, what we've accomplished, but then spend some time also talking about 2023 and the priorities going forward. Oh, good. Okay, so when I first began working with the District of Lillooet, it was in 2020. And of course, we all remember how crazy that was. And so the first thing in landing was just to kind of gather and understand the impacts of COVID at the time. So we did business surveys, what's happening, how our business is affected, tried to create the links to the resources that were coming out pretty much every day. There was a new resource for businesses and for residents. And then as we moved through that, we moved into more of the, let's identify some immediate opportunities. So end of 2020, 2021, we did a resident sentiment survey because we had said, okay, like there's a lot of things happening right now, but summer was coming. We knew summer was going to open up. And so we said tourism, we want to capture the BC residents that were traveling in their province. We knew that borders were still closed. So that was that green stage that you see, the immediate recovery opportunities. So we kind of doubled down on tourism. We're able to secure some grant money for the Visit Lillooet website and created that new web presence. And that was at a time where we didn't have an active chamber. So we were working with Tourism Lillooet and Councilor DeBruin would remember putting that website together at the time. Now we're in the stage, the purple stage here, the plan for long-term resiliency, which is really what we've been working on 2022 and now into 2023. But all of that, some of you have seen this already, but I thought it'd be helpful just to go back to grounding ourselves. The work that we've been doing since 2020 and into 2023, it was supported by an Economic Development Advisory Committee. Again, we didn't have an active chamber yet at that time, so we had a group, it wasn't a council committee, it was just an informal ad hoc committee of businesses and not-for-profits. And that group worked alongside me to inform the next steps. What do we need to do? And one of the most important takeaways that group team said, you have to talk to the residents. If you're going to start envisioning the future, the economic future of Lillooet, what is it the residents are saying? Where do they see us going in 5 years, 10 years? So we did that. We conducted another resident survey separate from the resident sentiment survey, which was about, are you okay with us marketing to BC residents and inviting them here? This was a resident survey that was all about what future, what is Lillooet's economic future? And the things that we heard back were that the residents, and it was a wide range of age groups. It wasn't just, it was actually quite representative. Ideally, it would have been even more people participating, but it was a good number of residents, all ages, all lengths of time living in Lillooet. And they said that the priority sectors that they saw flourishing were tourism, agritourism, cultural tourism, agriculture and viticulture, healthcare and wellness, retirement living, and then the work from anywhere kind of virtual commuters. Those were where they saw the sort of the direction. That's where the puck was going. And then we asked where we should be focusing, and they said those are the sectors. Not to underplay the importance of manufacturing or forestry, but in terms of where that future opportunity was, that was the thinking of residents in the survey. They also commented on amenities, because we know in economic development, it's a long-term play. Right? Economic development is not about what we achieve next month or even in the next 6 months. I mean, much like the work that you do as mayor, you're thinking about the long-term perspective and what the community needs. So they also identified things like walking and hiking trails, parks and green spaces. And we knew that when we're thinking about resident attraction or business attraction, private sector capital, what attracts them now to a destination is those amenities. So, 20, 30 years ago, private capital wanted to know where they could golf. Private capital today wants to know where they can hike and mountain bike. So those amenities were also a very important part of that longer term vision for economic development. And we tested what makes Lillooet special and unique, because to that point in time, kind of the messaging was we have everything. And Lillooet having everything, that's not a message that plays well, because when you say you have everything, when you're everything to everyone, you're kind of nothing to no one. So we had to understand what was truly unique about us. And what the residents came back and said was the climate, it's the environment, the junction of the ecosystems, the landscapes, and the people themselves, the residents of Lillooet and the Stallion. We asked about what kind of supports were needed, and I'll share this with you because all of this went into the economic development strategy that we said, okay, well, what do we need to focus on in this longer term view of economic development? So yes, housing, public transportation, a desire for more tourism experiences, local arts and performances that attract visitors, but also create animation and vibrancy downtown, improve downtown aesthetics and the revitalization, a supportive council, staff and bylaws, streamlined approval processes, mentorship, seed funding, and all of those things. So a lot of the things that you hear Johannes talking about are also in the longer term economic development strategy. And then there were a bunch of additional thoughts. And residents commented on beautification, the importance of the hospital and doctors, local stores. There was a real strong desire for local retail, not sort of chain stores. And these were just there were open comment sections on the survey. The importance of the rec center and the importance of relationships with the staff and communities, and a desire to migrate towards sustainability, whether that was in our building practices or however that would manifest, for that reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and alternative energy sources. So that's just as context. So we created an economic development strategy, and again, I just want to sort of compare that to business development. So a lot of the really good work that the chamber is doing has much more immediacy to it. It's almost like that's more business development. How can we support businesses today and what they need? And then the economic development piece that needs to dovetail with that. And we need to be collaborating to make sure we're really optimizing the work that we're doing together, is more around 3, 5, 10 years. How do we create the conditions that bring residents and private capital here? Because we can't force, like say we want, talked about it earlier today, we want an e-bike rental company. Can't put a gun to anyone's head and say you must open an e-bike rental, but we can create the conditions where private capital says, okay, there is a business model here. So what do we need to do to create those conditions that then make us attractive for private capital? And that's the longer term piece, because that is about infrastructure and amenities and housing and all of those pieces that create the foundation for people who want to make their homes and their lives and their businesses here. A quick example of that, just to see the comparison, is in the resident survey. Residents said agriculture was a key sector for Lillooet. So, of course, no surprise there. It was an important part of the future economic development. And then the next step was we looked at the ALR and saw these huge parcels and said, well, ALR, we can't change ALR. Like there's lots of rules around ALR, but it would be nice if we could have smaller parcels, because they're so big to have more of these sort of organic farms, maybe smaller parcels. So then Lillooet went through the OCP process, and that ability to have those smaller parcels is now enabled through your OCP. And now we're working on a sector attraction campaign. So you can see through economic development, like it's step by step, and sometimes it feels like you're not making progress, but you do have to go through those steps. So now we have resident support, we have ALR, we have an OCP, and I'll show you next what we're going to do in terms of attraction into the agriculture sector. So in the 10-year sort of framework for economic development, there are a bunch of, I call them district investments and partnerships. Those were foundational things that needed to start right away. They were best led by local government, and the arrow continues. It's like start now, and it's going to continue for many, many years. And those were things like the hospitals and doctors, and how do we make sure that the hospital and we have the health and wellness resources here, because that's what residents want, that's what new residents want, that's what entrepreneurs want. The housing strategy, the downtown vitalization, amenity development, support for arts, culture, and heritage, and continued relationships with the Statlium, which includes the work that we've been doing on the cultural center opportunity. So that's foundational, and it started, and I'll share with you some of the highlights. There's a business retention piece. How do we support our businesses? And that's where I think there's a really nice fit with the chamber and the work that Johannes is doing, where we can sort of compare notes and say, okay, if you do this, we can do this, and align and really optimize our resources. The tourism development piece, there's the campground and the improvements there. I'll share some highlights around the sustainable funding for tourism, but there's a piece around tourism development, a piece for agriculture, food processing, a piece for those wellness and lifestyle migrants. But some of the first, it's kind of a first things first. If we were going to appeal to lifestyle, the wellness migrants, we had to make sure that we had housing and doctors and all of that in place. So there was a logic to this in terms of what we tackled first. So some of the things that we've accomplished in the last 3 years or so. We did establish the Economic Development Advisory Committee. It's not a committee that's meeting now because we have an active chamber, and we think there's maybe a better way to do that now. We had those business surveys, the resident sentiment survey, the resident economic development survey, and that was really about ground truthing. Instead of just thinking we knew what was needed, let's ask and see if we and be told what businesses and residents need. We spent a lot of time in the last 3 years building our relationships with the Statlium Nation, the Statlium communities. We've seen some updates on the District of Lillooet website. There's been some language around development and the opportunities, some new video content, some of which was shared with the chamber, and some new images as well that we've been purchasing over the years, but really trying to refine the message of why Lillooet. And I'll show you some more about the possible positioning that we'd like to go forward with. We had the Range Beyond Range Circle Tour. That was on the tourism piece. That was a collaborative with Pemberton and the Bridge River Valley to do a circle tour, because Range Beyond Range, and you're not going to have cell service, and you better have a 4-wheel drive vehicle. So for the more adventurous traveler, so I was able to secure $60,000 over the 3 years to support that. And then the responsible travel messaging, that's been an interesting one too. So this is just a couple of shots. Initially, we got 20,000 from Destination BC, and then we've had that 20,000 for the next 3 years. We're expending that in 2023. In 2022, we added a number of the Statlium experiences, like at the Hoist and Fishing Rocks, that reopened. It had been closed through COVID through 2020 and 2021, and so when it reopened, we embedded them in that Little Town Hotel up in Shalaf, and of course the campground now being operated by Seco Rush. The responsible travel, I personally sat for 2 years on the Don't Love It to Death committee. It was the Sea to Sky Responsible Travel. They got CRIP money to create that program. In the interim, though, we launched our own. We took the Welcome to Our Home piece, which is the piece that you see on the right of the screen. And we still have the opportunity to participate in the Don't Love It to Death program. But I think that that's something that maybe requires a bit of discussion, because there is also some concern that that's maybe not the best messaging, given that we have experienced deaths on this highway. And is that a little too, some have suggested it's a bit insensitive. And so, but the opportunity is there if it is something we want. Some more opportunities that we activated. We were able to secure the $1 million for the campground improvements. That was the largest grant to a local government under the Tourism Dependent Communities Program. And of course, that's been really fundamental to furthering the relationship with Sequawash. We secured funding for the Statlium Cultural Center. Although it had been conceptualized for 20 years, there had never been a business plan done for it. And so we got the funding to do the business plan, to ground truth the financial commitments that would be required, both capital and operating. And that's what led to the realization that an integrated facility with a revitalized rec center complex that really created this beautiful heart and center on Main Street in Lillooet was something that had a lot of support here at the council table, but also with the Statlium chiefs. So that was very heartening. And then that moved to a memorandum of understanding that was signed by the district, by Lillooet Tribal Council, and by the SLRD. And then just in 2022, we got another $30,000 grant to continue the concept development. And I'll share with you shortly in 2023 where we want to take that. Because now the focus looking forward, now the 2023 work plan. And input on this is always welcome. We need to continue to focus on those relationships with Statlium economic development counterparts. I speak regularly to my counterparts at Haklip, at Hoyston, and Shalaf to understand what their focus is and see if there is. We're not always going to want to work on the same things, but there will be opportunities where we say, oh, that's actually something where we're stronger together. Let's both work on that. Continue to support the Statlium Cultural Center and the Rec Center redevelopment concept, but there's more engagement that's required there. And that's the bottom line on that. And that's engagement, here at the council table with district staff, with the residents of Lillooet, also with the Statlium communities themselves. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. The other area, I'm going to talk very briefly on each of these three, but we have some key sector promotion pieces now that we'd like to advance in 2023. So in the first area, we need to continue to connect with the Statlium Dev departments, their managers, and talk about where we can work together. And then also draft, there's a desire for a memorandum of understanding specifically on economic development with Sequawash. So again, it's these relationship building activities. It is about time, and it is about spending time and speaking and building those relationships, building that trust. So that work in 2023 will continue. The cultural presence in 2021, we did the business planning. 2021-22, we got some more money to be able to take the concept that was now broadly supported for let's do something together in the rec center on that sort of the primo site on Main Street in Lillooet. And we worked with Unison Architecture, and they came up with this concept that it's right on the bottom of the screen. Happy to share more of this at any point. But what we found was we also, with working with Lillooet Tribal Council, and Jim MacArthur was a big piece of this, we brought together a Statlium Advisory Committee. And yes, it was a lot of the original members of USWOS that had for the last 20 years been aspiring to have this cultural center. But I think the beautiful thing about this advisory committee is that it's now about half young people. And so it has this revitalized energy and from all the Statlium communities. They looked at that concept that had been put together and they said, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel culturally true to the Statlium. And they wanted more time to be able to make it more their own. So what we've done already in 2023, there was a call for the C2C meetings, the community to community meetings. That program is active again. They actually increased the application amounts. It was 5, now it's 10. So we put 2 applications in, one for the district and one through Lillooet Tribal Council. That's going to, hopefully that'll be approved, and that will be the next tranche of money to start that more robust engagement, both with the Statlium communities, but also with the residents of Lillooet and Area B, to understand what that could be, that entire complex, not just the cultural center piece, but the pool, the gym, the rec center, the skate park, the outdoor spaces. So that won't be enough for the kind of fulsome engagement we need, but I think it'll get us started. And I have found and worked now with one of the only Indigenous architects in Canada. There are shockingly few Indigenous architects. There's only 3 or 4 in Canada. She's from BC. Her name's Kelly Adzurdzi-Bapti, and she works with another architect who's mentored her. This is a sample of the kind of work that they do. It's not relevant to Lillooet, but I sat in a room with them where they were speaking with the Ktunaxa elders, Pembroke, and it was very informal. It's just like this. You're just all around. Scott has, he just lays out a long sheet of white paper. He's got like 500 pencil crayons, and they're talking about what their dreams and their aspirations are, and he's sketching. And it is so effective compared to like PowerPoint or Flipchart, or like you can just feel the energy of people get engaged when they see their ideas come to life before them. And he's the first one to say, you know, this is just a point in time. You know, today, this is what we talked about and this is what it looked like. But Kelly's process, because she has done this work in her own community, she's working in Lytton right now, and also potentially at Hat Creek in the future. I've talked to Jim at Lillooet Tribal Council, and we think that that would be a really good fit in the C2C to come and work with you, with senior staff, and to have the same opportunity, work with the Satlium elders. They go into schools as well, and they work with youth and really start to have a more robust engagement process. We've ground truth, we've got a great site, we've got a business plan, but we're kind of missing that groundswell of community support for what this could be and what it could look like. So that's an important part of the work that needs to be done in 2023. And the last piece I have for you, and these are very early drafts, but the district and sector promotions. So knowing now what the community supports in terms of sector development, we need to be out and have more awareness and more presence about why Lillooet, why choose Lillooet. And we're working with a concept that that plays with Find Your New Beginning, whether that is, sorry, I don't have the right picture up here, but start your farm, start your family, start your winery, start your tourism business. So your new beginning, we're mile zero. This is a place where you can start your new beginning. And that's the sort of high level promo piece. And then underneath that, we would nest a more specific piece on, this is just an example of the viticulture piece. So Find Your New Beginning, winery and viticulture, and that's where we start to play out why Lillooet, our land values, the terroir, the climate, some of the references to research studies that prove out, you know, the capacity to have a successful winery, and of course, like showcase the wineries and all the awards that places like Fort Barrett's have. So that's kind of the thought in terms of sector promotions. We need a district piece, why Lillooet, and then one for viticulture, one for agriculture, one for tourism, one for health and wellness. So that's also part of the 2023 work plan. And then we need a distribution strategy, because it's great to have these pieces, but how are we going to push them out and get word out? And that has to continue in tandem with the infrastructure, the downtown revitalization, the housing piece, the doctor piece, that piece that runs across the top that we always need to keep working away at to make sure that when people do come and look at us, we meet those base conditions and they do continue to investigate and ultimately choose them. So yeah, the long-term foundation continues to be built, and would love to hear questions or feedback. Yeah, happy to be here and still trying to move things forward step by step.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I noticed that you put logging on the bottom of the list.
Oh.
I don't understand that, because the logging jobs, it takes 4 tourist jobs to look after one guy logging job, the amount of pay he gets.
Yeah.
And why is that at the bottom? We're not focusing on that. We have a problem here in Lillooet. We don't have any loggers left in Lillooet. I first moved here. I lived here all my life, but I moved back. There was about 6 or 8 contractors here and 15 or 30 logging trucks. there's only about 2 or 3 owner operators left here. I think we're looking the wrong way. Because, you know, you get a $15 or $20 or $15 or $17 job out of a tourist trade. You get a $35 an hour job out of a logging.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
You know, you're leaving that out. I mean, or you're missing it, or I missed it.
We're taking our cue from the resident survey, where we specifically tried to probe, do you see Lillooet's economic future in forestry and logging? And these other sectors, based on that survey, had stronger support. Now, that's not to say that we only listened to a resident survey. I think the investigation that we did, and maybe we need to do more investigation, and the input that we got was that the high value timber is getting harder and harder to access, like it's farther and farther away. So some of the economics of the forestry industry based in Lillooet were becoming more challenging. But, you know, we tried for over a year to get a forestry rep on our ECDev committee, and we just couldn't get one. So I would love to do some more research into that to truly see what the opportunity
I think
is.
it has to, because, you know, the sawmill jobs down there and the forestry, but the tourism industry beat hard for wages. Like, huge. Nothing matter with tourism, but we're pushing all tourism and no real industry jobs, which are the paying jobs. But the oil field and the mining and the rest of it, and we're missing out on that. I don't think we should. That's just my thought.
Well, we can certainly do some more research, and again, tourism is one of the sectors, but agriculture, viticulture, health and wellness services, and then speaking to those retirees that want to come and make Lillooet their home, and the migrant or the workers, the work from anywhere people, those were also part of the mix. So
I also farm too, and I'll tell you, she's not a high paying job.
that's a labor of love. Yeah.
Just wanted to ask about the resident survey. I don't know if that was under a rock or something, but when was this?
I'd have to go back and check the date. It was also at a time, you know, unfortunately, where everyone was kind of feeling surveyed to death, because we had so many COVID surveys of this, that, and the next thing. So, you know, it would be interesting to perhaps do it again. And I think it was September 2021.
And then this was done in Lillooet?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, how many people were surveyed?
It went out to the entire district list of, it was a list of homeowners. Yes, it was like the same list for property taxes, was it? So, I mean, we tried to get as robust a list as we could. I don't remember the total surveys back. I don't have that at hand right now.
No, yeah, I don't recall it. And just when people say surveys, I kind of get nervous because you listen to the news and they say, oh, we did a survey of BC or whatever, and they surveyed 1,000 people.
Yeah,
I think that is.
went out to the entire
Okay.
district's list.
None, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to 11.2, 2022 annual municipal report.
Thank you, through the mayor. This should be the last of the financial reports that you see for a little while anyways. The last of our legislated financial reporting that we have to do. It also includes a lot more information about the district's operations on top of just finances. So we are required to make the annual report available to the public for 14 days before council considers it. It has been available to the public since May 15th, so it's been available a couple of weeks now. It was advertised on our Facebook, our webpage, as well as in the newspaper. To date, I have received no questions or submissions from the public. So it is with council to receive and approve.
Thank you. I'd just like to say, I think it's a really good report. And I appreciate all the work that staff did on it. And the counselors' reports on themselves, that was really good. I enjoyed reading them. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, seeing none, will someone move that the council consider the District of Lillooet's 2022 annual municipal report in conjunction with submissions and questions from the public, and that council approve the 2022 annual municipal report as presented? Councillor Reed, seconded by Councillor Glenn. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, 12.1, Growing Communities Fund Reserve.
Thank you again through the mayor. So the district, as you're more than likely aware, received just under $1.3 million from the Growing Communities Fund. One of the stipulations of the funding is that it's required to be set aside in a reserve that has to be set up by bylaw. So this bylaw is coming to council just to establish the reserve for the Growing Communities Fund. And staff are recommending that it be introduced and given first 3 readings.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I have one. So once the money is used and within the 5 years, what happens to the reserve? Do we just dissolve it, or is it something that we're gonna see if we get more money to put in it, or what happens with this reserve?
Through the mayor, my understanding is this was a one-time grant.
Right.
Not to say that they couldn't change their mind in the future and do it again. Saying it's a one-time grant, once the money's gone, we would just repeal the bylaw for the reserve fund.
Okay, no further questions. Can I have a motion that,
I see the list here and whatnot for the drinking water and all that. Do we not have, funding for that already, or is this just making it so it's wide open so we can use it for what we need to use it for? You know, like we have surpluses in different things and whatnot.
Mhm.
And this is just adding to all those surpluses so we can use it as we see, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
okay, can I have a motion that the Growing Communities Reserve Establishment Bylaw number 2023-010 be introduced and read the first, second, and third time? Councillor DeBruin, seconded by Councillor Klein. Any further questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, 12.2, Z 23-004, zoning amendment bylaw number 2023-011 to allow an accessory building with no principal use in R1 at 1.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Z 23-004 is a proposal for a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment to allow the construction of a new metal storage building on a rural residential lot that currently has no principal use. The purpose of this presentation is to inform you about the background, the discussion, and the recommendation of this proposal, and to answer any questions you may have at the end. The lot is a 1 hectare rural residential lot that is not in the agricultural land reserve. It has 1 accessory building on site that was used for storage, but no principal residential or agricultural use. The owners want to replace this building with a new metal storage building that has double the floor area of the current structure. The building will not be serviced by water or electricity. However, the building area does overlap a registered archaeological site, so a site alteration permit from the BC Archaeology Branch is required before the district can issue a building permit for the new structure. In the official community plan, this lot is designated as rural residential, which means it is intended to accommodate farms and larger parcels of rural land without municipal servicing, along with associated rural residential style housing. In the current zoning bylaw, the two main types of permitted principal uses are residential and agriculture. Building a new storage building on the site does not fit into either of those categories, and it also exceeds the maximum floor area allowed for accessory buildings without a principal use. Therefore, a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment is required to enable this development. Staff have reviewed the proposal and have no concerns with it. We believe that it will not have any negative impacts on the surrounding properties or the environment, and that it will not prevent future residential or agricultural development on the lot. Staff also note that there are other similar lots in the area that have accessory buildings without principal uses, and that this proposal is consistent with the OCP's vision for rural residential development. Therefore, staff recommends giving bylaw 2023-001 first and second reading and scheduling a public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion that the District of Lillooet zoning bylaw 2018 number 454, amending bylaw number 2023-011 be introduced and read a first and second time, and that a public hearing be scheduled, and further that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. Councillor McNary, seconded by Councillor Weed. Any further questions? All in favor? Okay, 12.3 subcode prescriptive path bylaw, building bylaw 2021, that's amending bylaw number 3.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the BC Energy Step Code is an optional compliance path in the BC Building Code that sets performance-based energy efficiency requirements for new construction. It consists of different steps that represent increasing levels of energy efficiency from step 1, which was equivalent to the base 2018 Building Code revision 1, to step 5, which is net zero energy ready. The BC Energy Step Code allows local governments to choose the step they want to require or incentivize for their jurisdiction, as long as it is higher or equal to the minimum current provincial standard. The Step Code performance method requires builders to conduct energy modeling, test air tightness, and quantify mechanical efficiency and heating needs for each building. This method can be costly and time-consuming, especially if builders need to hire an energy consultant. The prescriptive methods outlined in the BC Building Code are simpler and more flexible, as they provide specific requirements for each building component, such as insulation, windows, and heating systems. By amending the building bylaw to allow for builders to use prescriptive methods instead of the Step Code performance method, the district can help builders meet the Step Code requirements without the onerous and expensive process of hiring an energy consultant, many of whom will have limited availability now that their services are required. The proposed amendment would not compromise the energy efficiency or carbon emissions goals of the district, as the prescriptive methods are designed to achieve equivalent or better performance than the Step Code performance method. The proposed amendment would also align with the provincial direction, as the BC Building Code now requires 20% better energy efficiency for most new buildings in BC as of May 1st this year. Starting from May 1st, the provincial government raised the minimum provincial standard for most new buildings to Step 3 for Part 9 buildings and Step 2 for Part 3 buildings. This means that all new buildings in BC will have to meet these steps or higher, regardless of the local government's adoption of the Energy Step Code or not. The District of Lillooet has the option to adopt a higher step code than the minimum provincial standard for its jurisdiction, but for clarity, staff are not recommending this, adopting any higher level of the step code. In order to give the building community some flexibility on meeting these new provincial requirements, we must adopt these options in the bylaw. The province has given us an undefined amount of leeway time to adopt this bylaw. So between May 1st and the date that this bylaw may be adopted, we have been exercising the discretion that they've given to us to allow either method of compliance in anticipation of council consideration of this bylaw. Thank you.
questions?
So, Kevin. So, what do, excuse me, what are we actually trying to accomplish here?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as of May 1st, the province took us, so there's the 5 steps that I mentioned of the Energy Step Code. And as of May 1st, the province has enshrined Step 3 as the new code. It's no longer optional. So as part of Step 3, it goes over to what is called the performance method, where basically every builder has to mathematically prove how energy efficient their buildings are. And they often do this by bringing in an energy consultant, and they do all of the R values for the installation, and they do the air test, which is basically sealing up the house within an inch of its life and plugging the vacuum inside to see how much air is escaping. So that's the option that the code requires. However, they've given us the option, if we adopt it by bylaw, to also use the prescriptive methods, which is much more similar to the way that the code works now, where it's got a list of things you can do, and if you can show that you've done one of those, then you've met code. So you're not allowed to use that method unless the local government adopts that method into its bylaw by bylaw. So this is in essence giving builders more options to meet the code, as opposed to the very narrow and very the very specific way, and you require all those additional professionals to be able to prove that you can meet the efficiencies rather than just meeting what they prescribed in the
So
code.
they can go either way.
They can go either way. This is giving them the option, and we are not barring them from using the performance method if they choose to go that way as well.
Through the mayor, I was just curious as to if it's possible to adopt other bylaws other than just for the Energy Step Code to make things a little easier.
Madam Mayor, the Building Act only allows you to put in certain, and I'm sorry, again, I'm not an expert in everything, as I wish I could, but the Building Act doesn't let you modify the building code as much as it did in the past. And what happened is municipalities in the past were actually bringing in far more strict requirements than the building code. So they had to bring in the Building Act to limit what municipalities could do. I believe we're limited to certain things like certain fire requirements we can have above and beyond the code based on our firefighting capabilities, but we can't go less than the code. So it's the minimum standard that is imposed on us by the province.
Questions for the room?
I'm just curious, until when is this prescriptive approach allowed? I mean, it's being introduced now, but the BC Building Code is in development, and I'm sure the next step will be introduced at some point. Is this going to go away, or is this a permanent option?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I wish I had an option, an answer for you on that. I hope that it's a permanent option because it does allow for that flexibility, especially in the rural areas where we don't have necessarily the same expertise. Everyone who's got these performance expertise, they've gone to the coasts or they've gone to Ontario or where the money is. So I do hope that it comes in, and if it does, I will continue to recommend that we adopt it into the bylaw. I may have a better answer for you in November when they start to bring forth the next iteration of the building code. It won't be step 4. It's going to be an actual new code to get closer to the national code. But hopefully they'll let us know what their plans are for step 4 prescriptive methods then. To expand on that, we didn't know this was going to be an option until about May 1st.
Okay, can I have a motion that building bylaw 2021-006, amending bylaw number 2023-008 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time? Councillor Reid, second by Councillor McNary. Further questions? Seeing none. Favor? Okay, notice of motion. that want to start this off? I'll turn it over to Councilor DeBrum.
During our last council meeting on May 16th, I provided notice that I would I put a motion in front of you. This is based on the following considerations, and this has been spoken during the public input as well, is that we're starting to see more and more evidence of people that are currently being homeless in town, with impacts on private property and health and safety for those involved. I also recognize that while government has a responsibility for the basic universal rights, it doesn't mean that every government has that responsibility. The responsibility of government has been divided by federal, provincial, and municipal. So in this regard, the municipal government doesn't necessarily have a responsibility for housing, because that is put with the province, or with mental health, which has also been put in the province. So it's not necessarily a universal basic human right that the municipal government needs to solve. However, we are dealing with issues, and local community organizations are doing what they can in that space in order to alleviate the issues around homelessness and mental health. But it is a very sticky problem, and while Singapore again may have come up with certain solutions that may work very well, or to some extent, it is a long process in order to get solutions in place, particularly if we're dependent on the province in order to implement them. So we can wait for those long-term solutions to be implemented, but I think in the short run, it would be nice to see what we can do in our limited capacity that we have, with the limited means that we have in this space. There's not a lot of things that we can do within our bylaws, because we cannot prevent people from putting up a camp somewhere, or making a general rule that no one can camp anywhere, because there are some legal limitations to what our bylaws indicate. So with that in mind, and in order also to avoid the problem that we basically execute a trespassing order where we say it's like, well, you're not, it's private property, you have to move, is that we get this situation where the camps just move around town, and we're chasing our own tail at that point. Therefore, the motion reads that we ask staff to prepare a report on options for addressing homeless encampments in the district, including the pros and cons of each of those options. In my initial May 16th verbatim, I referred to the Williams Lake solution. I think that is one possible outcome. A Vienna solution could be an outcome. A Singapore solution could be an outcome, or whatever else, or there may be just not a whole lot that comes forward. But I think it would be helpful to see what we can do in this space, and understand what each of those options will cost, and what we want to accomplish with it.
So can I ask, so we want staff, just so I understand this, do you want staff to list the available places that they would be like parks, so it's been a whole lot of land, so that's what I'm asking, like what is exactly?
No, so
defined?
one option would be, and one option would be to designate a parcel where people that find themselves without a home are able to pitch up a tent, and where the district chooses not to evict them based on trespassing rules, right? That is one option. The other option would be, to look into building a supportive housing or whatever, where, you know, something temporary, you know, something permanent would be built in order to house people that are experiencing homelessness. That is a much bigger option, very different cost to it. All of those are solutions to addressing homelessness in our town. And I'm sure there are more. I just, you know, there are two as an example to outline what those options could be. And we don't need to, or at least I don't think at this stage, we don't need to have every possible solution developed in the greatest amount of detail, but at least that we know as a council what are our options and what could we, you know, embark on.
What is a dorm? The old dormitory, what is that for? What's its purpose?
That is a homeless shelter, but
So we have one
we
basically.
do have one.
Okay.
And it's run by the Friendship Center. Have you talked to the Friendship Center at all?
Not formally, no. I know that they run the shelter. I also know that not everyone is able to use the shelter, and sometimes that is a choice that they make not to use the shelter because there are conditions to use the shelter, and whether or not the shelter is there or not, or whether or not there is a solution. Sorry,
That's okay, because I know what
but regardless of having the shelter or not, we're still seeing homelessness, right? So, and maybe, you know, the option is that something needs to be modified in the existing shelter in order to resolve the issue, which is completely, but I just don't have I don't have the answers. And I think that's why we need to find the answers. Maybe the answer is the existing shelter that we have. But something needs to be changed or done.
Through the mayor. We do need to look at something here, but I think firstly, we really should be talking to the community sheriff's shelter because we don't know numbers, to maybe ask them the number of homeless people that we do have, and also the number of the unsheltered, how many beds that the shelter actually has, and what is their rate of occupancy, because that is going to direct us as to looking for solutions here as well. I guess we do need, as Councillor De Bruin said, to find out some people are not using it and some people are being turned away. So what is the reason for those as well? So I think before we can really sort of start throwing ideas or telling staff, look at this, or try and find a whole thing, we really need to know numbers of both our homeless and unsheltered. And mentioning the Williams Lake thing, that just came about here in the middle of May, so they really haven't, from what I can understand. I looked up their newspaper and I started reading articles about what they have implemented. So that was really May 15th that they had decided that this is the avenue that they're going to do to be opening up the park. So far, I don't think they have been operating this idea long enough to get a full grasp of what is all involved. One of the articles I read there is so far in Williams Lake, 10 to 20% of bylaw officers' time per week is spent on the homeless. We don't even have a bylaw officer yet, so this is going to impact bylaw. It's also going to impact public works and everything else. So I think we really need to start with our numbers, who we actually need to be looking for. And then once we have numbers and actually touch base with the community care shelter, then go forward with that with a better idea of how we can direct staff as to what to look for.
Councillor Weed, through the mayor, when I read this, behalf of Councilor Bruin, I kind of thought this is a really good idea, and I think that that is the starting point for staff to reach out to the Friendship Center, find out what their numbers are, this, that, and the other. I don't feel as a counselor that it's up to Councilor Bruin to do that, and I think that's what his request is. Could staff come back to us with a report as to where we can move forward, or, you know, give us some ideas from speaking with the Friendship Center or the people there or the shelter as to where we can go from there. And I think it's an excellent idea as a start. No, I don't think he's saying seek out a partner.
No, I
seek
just
out-
wanted to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I fully support it, like to come back with some information for us so that we can move forward in a direction.
I would like, okay, I would just like to add, if we're engaging with the Friendship Center, if they're, because I know that they're doing some stuff in the back there. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, but I would like, you know, if staff is going to ask about, you know, their numbers and how many homeless are in town, if in fact that property would be able to do something along that line as well. You know, because if it's already, the homeless shelter is there, maybe something outside for people that want to live in the same conversation. Did you have another question?
No, just to support what Councillor Flatt had indicated, absolutely part of this direction is indeed to gather numbers, you know, and understand a bit why the current shelter is not solving the issue, and to understand more. I think what we need to do is understand. If we can come up with a quick solution, great. If we need, if this is going to be a longer process, there's a longer process, but we need to start the process.
So, Mr. Taylor, do you have any more questions? That's what you had on there.
No, my mind's going spin here. So what we're actually asking is for staff to spend how much time on this to try to dig this up and come up with some ideas that can we give them a time limit or what they can do, and you know, trying to shoot sheep or so.
Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, from what I understand, the intent of the report that's being asked for is that it's talking to those in the community. I would think community care shelter, hospital, ambulance services, police services, bylaw, just hearing from them, collecting that data. That's not going to take a ton of time. That's conversations we should have anyways, just to maintain relationships. They're going to be thrilled that we're interested in learning these facts from them. I think some of the statistics may already exist for a lot of the reporting that they have to do as their own agencies for funding, just for their operations. So it shouldn't be challenging for them or for us to gather that information. If I'm correct in my understanding, is that the various options with pros and cons shown here in the bullet points is just the starting point. So it could be as simple as an option is to expand the current shelter. Another option is to look at alternative bylaw enforcement options. Another one might be designating parks. It's not to get into the depths of every little detail of what that's going to mean and that stuff. It's just, here's some high level things. We'd be asking for this from these various agencies. What do you think might help, right? And see if we can find some commonalities, and that would be included in the report going. We're hearing this common recommendation from these agencies. This seems to be where the gap is. Or is there no gap? And we can try all of these things and maybe we'll get one more person in the shelter and the problem won't be solved. We don't know that yet. That's where those conversations are. So in terms of actual time, I don't think it's going to be horribly impacting on our time. I'm not gonna guarantee I'm gonna get back to you in a certain time period, because a lot of it's gonna be depending on the availability of those in know. It's a time of year, so it could be a couple months, a few months, I'm not sure, it's hard to guess. But we would be aiming to get it back, I think, by this fall. And I can also just do some conversations with council and mayor to say, does this seem like it's going in the right direction for you? Meeting what your expectations are of this report before I bring you.
So do you need a motion?
It's Councillor Bruin's notice of motion, so he's the mover. We need a seconder for discussion and then we move the question.
Any further discussion? None? Okay, all in favor? Sure. Okay. Reports from the mayor. Okay. The May 17th, Mr. Gallagher and myself met with BC Hydro reps, Whitney Dean, Robin Spencer, Fox Turner, Don Liu, and Michael Pico. They gave us an update of the progress and projection of the Bridge River and LaJoy Dam in the coming years and what that impact will mean for Lillooet and surrounding areas. So BC Hydro will be hosting an open house on next Wednesday, June 14th, and I urge the community to come to this open house, ask your questions to have a good understanding of what this means. And I also ask that council advertise on Facebook and by other means as well. So an open house, I believe it's at 11:45. Gosh, which meeting is this? No, it's June 14th, it's Wednesday. What time? 6. Is it at 6? You and I have an earlier one?
We have our own.
Okay. Okay, at 6 p.m. Okay, great. So basically, what we're looking for is what is the impact that BC Hydro is going to have? If all these people are moving into our community, that's great for the whole, right? So this was my concern, is that's great for the hotels, that's great for the restaurants. I want them to do well and prosper. However, I feel that the smaller businesses along Main Street especially will have a harder time if the tourists aren't coming in to be able to stay in the hotels. They're not coming in because there's no availability. Not sure about the campground, how that's going to be taken up, but I don't think it's going to be too bad. But still in all, I mean, people have their trailers and everything. What is the impact going to be on our? So that's what we want to hear. That's what we want to hear from the open house. And I also, there's got to be some sort of, legacy maybe for this impact over the next couple of years. The legacy I'm suggesting to them is that we need the underground wiring going from the museum to the fire department. I mean, we used to have a program, or they used to have a program where we could do that as a community and 50% was forgiven. And they took that program out last year or the year before, and we no longer have it. So I think they should be able to pay for all of it. I'm okay, why not, right? I mean, there's got to be some sort, and especially for that downtown, because those businesses down there are going to see the biggest impact on their business. So they should see the biggest reward as far as I'm concerned. But anyways, that's just my opinion. The open house, 6 o'clock next Wednesday, and please use your Facebooks too as well. May 24th and 25th, SLRD. So there is a proposed addition to the Hawklip Reserve that is just south of Fountain. So it's been approved by the federal government and was presented as information.
So I guess on March 27th, the SLRD received a letter from the Indigenous Services Canada advising that Hot Club has, by way of bound council resolution, submitted a request that certain land located in the SLRD be set apart as addition to the Fountain Indian Reserve. The fee simple lands are located in the SLRD, electoral area B, currently owned by Canada and tax exempt. There is nobody living on this land. The government of Canada has discretion to create reserves and add land to existing reserves. And this policy directive sets out requirements for environmental management, improvements to proposed reserve land, third-party access. And so this expansion is currently in the works. So if you look at a map coming towards Lillooet, and you see Fountain Dam land, it actually just sits right below there. And again, you know, area rep, Vivian Birch Jones and I were pretty diligent making sure that there was nobody living on this land or anything like that, but there isn't. So I think it's really great that.
That's really cool. Sounds fit.
Where Uncle
When you're leaving though, just before you drop down the hill, there's a big flat out there and then the flat's down in the
I
bottom.
have a map I could send you. And it outlines and it's on that side of the road. Of course, there's a setback from the highway, just for hydro and that kind of thing, but. Okay. And we also had a presentation regarding the Don't Love It to Death campaign that strives to educate locals and visitors to basically mind their manners when out and about in our great outdoors. So I've asked Mr. Taylor to just throw a couple of screenshots out there of, yeah, just people and the littering, the garbage, the real increase in users, negative impacts. You can just click through those, yeah. So what we heard listening sessions, highlighting key problems, transportation, and yeah, wildlife conflict. And so the Don't Love It to Death campaign, Lillooet could, if they wanted to, partake in this, but like Suzanne said, you know, sometimes they felt that it was had a negative message and they weren't sure they wanted to partake in it, but it is still open if we wanted to do it, or if Tourism Lillooet wanted to do it, BC Destinations. But this is just a little video that they put out, so I just thought I'd share it because I thought it was.
There's a whole bunch of crap right underneath where I'm standing. Solo cups, swim gear, lots of sunglasses, lighters, vapes, weed grinder, hats, beer bottles, lots of beer cans, got lots of boat paddles.
This food bag is he taking? Oh my gosh.
Beautiful day at Cat Lake, except for all this garbage.
I just thought it was a really good video and I wanted to share it with you guys. And that was it. Thank you.
Very good.
I think this was good.
On May 17th, I attended one with other councillors, the event organized by the Lillooet Friendship Centre and the Lillooet Connect Hub, or Lillooet Connect Hub, where Jody Wilson-Raybould was the guest speaker, or the keynote speaker. And Chief Michelle Edwards also had had a talk there, very inspiring, lots of great perspectives, lots of new perspectives and new sort of things that, you know, I never knew. And so I thought it was just wanted to say thanks to the Friendship Center and the Little Connect Hub for putting that on. It was a sort of a second or third event that they put on in terms of working towards local reconciliation. And I had the pleasure of, or they organized at some point after the speakers to sit at a table and then move to another table. They had questions prepared so they could engage with, you know, the people at your table about certain topics. And I just felt that sometimes there just wasn't enough time to really dig in. But in the conversations that we did have, it was really nice to sort of share and hear other people share, and some very shocking things at times, and that really sort of, you know, provides you with more understanding of what, you know, what happened in this community in over the last decade and a half since Simon Fraser stepped foot on this bank. And so, like I said, I thought it was really. I'll look forward to the next event. I'm not sure when it is, but I think they're looking to do other things like that. And we encourage everyone to attend, and hopefully it will not just council or the group of people that was there, but more people from the entire community have the opportunity to come and attend and be part of that process. Then on May 25th, I had an AGM with Gold Country Community Society, where a slightly amended board was elected, and we were giving a little bit of an update because we're missing a marketing director and an executive director in the society. So it basically has a working board at this point. We're very close to hiring a new interim ED, which would put things a little bit back on track. And but there continues to be a big sort of question marks around the viability of Gold Country Community Society now that so many communities have basically stepped back and said, okay, we don't want to be part of it anymore. And unfortunately, you know, it's a lot of the area, these TRD and RD areas have stepped back. They were the largest contributors because while they have likely the least amount to gain from the efforts of Gold Country Community Society. And unfortunately, rejigging the contribution scheme wasn't part of the entire discussion. And so they basically said, okay, well, we're not going to take part of it. It means that a few communities now sort of shoulder the burden to carry the organization. So I don't know how, you know, unless there comes a completely new, different funding model, I'm not sure how viable it will be. But that's the sort of the task for the new ED or the interim ED that will come in and say, okay, come up with a viable business model. So that's what the AGM or the Gold Country said.
May 19th, I attended the Hubs Power collaboration night there with their keynote speaker, Jody Wilson-Rayborn. I thoroughly enjoyed it as well. I love listening to her insight, her stories, her history, and her journey there with politics. District of Lillooet, we were asked to speak on community safety. And as acting mayor, I introduced a pre-recorded presentation from the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention, which Lillooet is a member of. So we did do that there. After the dinner, as Bob was saying, there were 3 roundtable groups. on truth and reconciliation. We were not allowed to sit with anybody that we knew, which was actually quite refreshing there. A little scary, but quite refreshing. The conversations were really engaging. They were insightful. They were thought-provoking. I agree with Rolf. There was not enough time. One group, there was 4 of us, and we were having a wonderful conversation. We were sharing. We were told to move on, so we kind of hunkered down. We tried to stay in our little group so we could continue the conversation. We got called out on it and had to split up. But yeah, I would like to see something like that again, as opposed to actually, I thoroughly enjoyed it, speaking to different people, getting their insights and thoughts and their experiences as well. It was actually very moving. As I said, it was a privilege to listen to some of the community members in those little roundtable groups, and I was told that the Hub and Lillooet Friendship Centre are going to be releasing what they got from the pages where we're all writing down all of our thoughts and everything there. So I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing what the results to all of that was. Also then on May 21st, Mr. Deniger and I, and Acting Mayor again, met with Phil Chu from the founder of Canadians for Reconciliation Society, and 21 migrated Hong Kongers, as they like to be called. We met them at the former Chinese cemetery, which is actually located at the Lillooet Cemetery. I did not realize this, so this was something for me as well there. Mr. Chow is hoping to have our cooperation in erecting, can't talk tonight, sorry, a gateway arch which would be a step forward to reconciliation and healing for the Chinese community in Lillooet, which actually has a very long and sad history here. When we arrived, well, there were some of the Hong Kongers were actually kneeling and pulling up grass and weeds from one of the 2 Chinese grave markers that are actually at the cemetery. And there was an actual second small headstone that we found, which was broken and laying down on the ground. So we're not sure what happened with that, but they are the only 2 stone markers that are known to still exist at the cemetery there. Chief Sid Scotchman from Clicklett was also there. He was extended the invitation by Mr. Chow, and he gave a traditional welcome to them and gave a moving speech of the Statlium and Chinese shared histories. I spoke with many of the Hong Kongers, learning some of their history, how they came here, and also some of the history of the Chinese here in Lillooet that is known. Mr. Deniger, I know, will be speaking more on this. But I'm hopeful that the project for the Gateway Arch that they are wanting to erect, that's where I am here, will bring our community a little bit closer to helping healing with the Chinese community for Lillooet and through Canada here. And as I'm talking about the cemetery, I am going to make a notice of motion for the June 20th regular council meeting, that I will bring forward the motion regarding the state of repair of the entry gates to the Lillooet Cemetery. That's me.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor McMary.
Missed everything. I was supposed to go to the one they were up to, but I had to take care of medical issues.
Okay. Councilor Weir. On May 19th, I also attended at the rec center here, the Power of Class Station. Jody Wilson-Raybould was very inspiring. I did get the True Reconciliation book autographed, which I'm quite proud of. And I wanted to bring up that Tammy Mountain also gave a talk, and it was like one of those aha moments after she was listening to the main speaker, that she realized that she was the first female Indigenous kindergarten teacher in Lillooet, and that she is also the first female Indigenous principal at Cayuse Elementary. And it was just, you could just feel how overwhelmed she was when she came back to our table. And it was so inspiring for her to have that moment. It was just really something. The dinner was lovely, the service was lovely, it was, yeah, it was a great evening. And the round tables, I don't know, I was at one round table where it amazed me that the lack of knowledge, I guess, between the two parties. It was a young person that brought something up, that if we wanted true reconciliation, that the district of Lillooet should give the old schoolhouse property to the Stafford Young Men. It's not how it works. So it was just, you know, trying to talk that person through. This goes back to the province, if that's, you know, whatever. So it was just, I think there's some educational pieces that need to take place on both sides before we actually get to true reconciliation. And I think everybody's hoping for it in the times. And that was basically it. The rest of my month I spent on the road between Kelowna, Calgary, back to Kelowna, back home, and so on and so forth. Thank you. Yeah.
Just got a couple items. Tax notices are out, so please check your post office box. We're excited for this time of year, aren't we, all of us? Tax notices. Utilities were due yesterday. I think you didn't get it in as your calendar.
It was done.
Yeah, so hopefully you got utilities paid. Our fire chief is currently at the BC Fire Chiefs Conference this week, but he's messaged me some updates from it. One that as of this Thursday, fire ban is now in effect. Thursday, no more little campfires. And our fire department tries to match the province, so have to, it's wise to. And the forecast for the summer is it's going to be very much like 2017. It is going to be a disastrously dry, hot summer. So enjoy summer now while you can. Definitely working on educational campaign to make sure people are keeping their properties fire smart and being careful when they're out. Update today.
Thank you. No. So, media. The meeting is open to questions from the media and public.
I have a question about the dump, because I can't even take my ash from my wood stove to the dump. And when you go to the dump, they send you away if you've got branches, the bag of compost. They say I gotta separate it, and I want to know who makes up this law and what do I do with my ashes now? Because I am a very outdoorsy people, and we find a lot more now branches and compost because people say it's getting so difficult to go to the dump. And you ask the dump people, and they say it's you guys that make the rules.
SLRD that makes those rules. I do know that recently there was a small fire at the dump when somebody took the ashes up there. And so my understanding is that the ashes are now to be placed in plastic bags. And they are supposed to take them. But I will find out from the SLRD if the contractors are aware of that, because I would think the contractors should have, you know, some sort of obligation for fire suppression up there, no matter what is brought up there. But I will ask the SLRD if the contractors are indeed aware of that. Did you try and take them up in bags?
No, we clean our wood stove and we put it in a box, right? And let it sit there for a week to make sure they're out, right?
Right.
And you go up there and now they search through your trucks as people are, and they refuse them. Ashes, and they refuse. They got a bag of compost and you have branches. They say you can't do that. You gotta go home and separate them. So then I have to make 2 trips for my 1 bag of compost and then my little few branches that I've been pruning, and it's just getting more difficult. And like I say, in the bush, we are finding more and more, especially branches and things, because people to make trips, you know?
Right.
And you're not supposed to put compost stuff in your garbage. I read that. but they're making it difficult up there. I don't mind if I pay the buck for the compost in one load. That's not a biggie. It's just, it's getting difficulter to use our dump. It's in Lac La Hache, the dump's free. In 150 Mile House, it's dump's free. It's got reuse it stores and they got a full-time personnel and it's very, I didn't see, my husband did, and it's very, and I just think nowadays we have that don't dirty, whatever that's what's happening in the bush, because I think hard to, that's not user friendly anymore.
All right, I'll take that to SLID. So the compost is separate, the branches are separate, and the bags of ashes.
Well, even can't you make those blocks, those cement blocks, and you put, and that's where the ashes go, so it's just ashes. Like, because people are gonna start dumping them in the bush, and then what's gonna happen? The bush is gonna get on fire, or we're gonna have a mess of ashes around.
I agree. I mean, we put our ashes in the garden. That's the road that tells all the ashes in.
I
But
don't
mean,
have a garden.
that's not suitable for everybody. And it's really unfortunate that one person takes some ashes up there that are hot, starts a fire, and, everything has to change thereafter. But again, I will talk to SOID. One thing I can promise you is our dump will never be free.
Is that because the SLRD in there, whatever up there?
It's because we have to pay a contractor to manage it, and that contracted price has to come from somewhere, right? So we pay a certain amount on our SORD, on our chances that come out. We pay a certain amount to the SORD, and then we pay the user the tipping fees, the garbage trucks, the thing.
And you get turned away if you're there at 3:30. No, go, and you just call, wow, like it's open till 4. You should go up to the dump and get the list of rules. Now, I forgot to bring them.
They're closed, they turn you away at 3:30?
3:30. There's a 3-page list of do's and don'ts at the dump now. And I don't care if they go through my vehicle or whatever, but they turn you away at 3:30. And I went, well, I've been in line since 20 after 3, because it's one person. And I just, it's just getting harder and harder. And I think that's why people are using the bush.
Maybe start kicking it off at the gate or.
Well,
And that's what
hey,
people are doing out of the bush.
Okay, well, I will definitely take that up at the SORD and thanks for bringing it up.
So do I come to the next meeting and find out the answer or discussion, or you'll let me know, or?
I can let you know, but I'll also do it in a roundtable discussion.
People would like to know in this town, even if it's somewhere.
Right, and I don't want to see people dumping, especially hot ashes out the bush.
Or branches, because if you got
branches,
piles of
right.
branches, that's a fire hazard if they're. Okay, thank you.
It says in your cute little thing here that the citizens of Littlewood are the volunteers, right? Okay. So anyways, I'm putting on this little apricot festival. And every year that I have done this, I've asked the district to make sure the street is clean and the little plants around the trees are all picked, the weeds, and make sure the lawn here is mowed. We want to put a really spectacular, I'll put the words of the mayor into her own mouth. We're going to make this little town sparkle. There you go. So if we could make it sparkle on the 21st and 22nd of July, the Apricot Chocolate Festival would be very, very great. So can you please do that? That's the question.
That's the question. Can we please do that?
The other thing is with the homeless people, it is a mentally ill problem. People don't have a choice. They feel that they don't have a choice and they are on the street and whatnot. Now, there are ways for people you can go and see. Kamloops has Ask Wellness, and we should have a chapter here. It is a very good thing for mentally ill people. So I think you should get a hold of them. They're on King Street. And King Street is another one that can actually help you out for Lillooet. in order to, maybe make a kind of like a King Street here. They bring in mental people that know how to work with these people, and they give them coffee, they take them out for a meal in order to bring them back out of this psychosis that they have and whatnot. And it's a very good thing. My brother is in the system. He is doing fantastically well. So that was just a solution to what you guys were talking about.
Further questions? Okay, seeing none. Will somebody please move that the meeting of the District of Lillooet Council be closed to the public pursuant to the community charter for citizens as written on the next page. Councilor Plan, Councilor McNary, in favor?
Thank you.